The Eternal Guardians, the 12 who united across oceans, mountains, forests, and deserts to seal the void and save the world, sacrificing their lives to become one with the Ley-Lines, ensuring balance, harmony, and life would flourish for generations beyond their mortal time. In the age when the world was still young and the veil separating the mortal realm from the spirit world was thin, 12 distinct legends were born. They emerged from distant lands and elements, carrying their own virtues, flaws, and destinies. Across continents, seas, mountains, and forests, their stories unfolded, each of them shaping the balance of nature and mankind in their unique way. Their paths were separate, yet all were threads of a larger tapestry, destined to intertwine when the world faced its gravest peril. The first was Oriella, a maiden of radiant beauty and warmth, born in fields where golden wheat brushed against the horizon. She lived in a fertile valley where generations thrived upon the bounty of the land. Yet during her childhood, a relentless drought struck, and famine clawed at her people with skeletal hands. Rivers dried, crops withered, and despair hung heavy in the air. Oriella, attuned to the rhythms of soil and sky, refused to surrender. Through long hours under the punishing sun, she cultivated the earth, learning to coax life from barren ground. She discovered the hidden pathways of underground water and harnessed the secrets of rain through the whispers of the wind. In time, her fields flourished with harvests so abundant that neighboring lands flocked to her valley for sustenance. Yet even as she saved countless lives, her heart bore the sorrow of those she could not rescue. Oriella's legend became one of hope and generosity, though each seed she sowed reminded her of famine's cruel memory. Far to the north, beneath eternal moonlight and whispering pines, was born Flourish, a boy with silver eyes and a spirit as wild as the wolves who howled under the stars. Orphaned in infancy, he was raised in the solitude of the forest. His bond with the wilderness grew unshakable. He learned to track elk across frozen trails, to climb trees as swiftly as squirrels, and to listen to the rustle of leaves as though they spoke. When a monstrous boar, colossal and furious, began terrorizing the forest's creatures, Flourish vowed to end its rampage. With unerring focus, he pursued it through underbrush and snow, his arrows guided by instinct and the forest's whispers. He struck true, felling the beast with a single arrow through its heart. Yet the victory came at a cost. In its dying breath, the boar's spirit fused with his own, granting Flourish heightened senses and an unbreakable bond with the forest. He became its eternal protector, knowing that humanity's hunger for expansion would one day threaten his sanctuary. His legend would be remembered as one of sacrifice and loyalty, the guardian who walked the line between man and beast. Far across seas shimmering under sunlit skies dwelled Leonora, a young woman whose laughter danced upon the waves and whose hands wove delicate garlands of seaweed and pearl. She belonged to an island kingdom rich in tradition, where coral reefs formed natural barriers against the ocean's fury. Life was peaceful until ruthless pirates descended upon the islands, plundering homes and desecrating sacred shrines. Leonora, undaunted by fear, stepped into the tide and called upon the ancient spirits of the sea. The ocean answered. Walls of living coral surged upward, weaving themselves into fortresses that tore apart pirate ships and drove their invaders back to open waters. The people hailed her as the savior of the archipelago, yet Leonora knew the pirates would return, stronger and vengeful. Her legend became one of guardianship and defiance, tides and reefs interwoven with the unyielding will of a protector. High in the frozen mountains where avalanches thundered down icy slopes, Serkan was born with a voice that carried like a hymn. His people, isolated and accustomed to hardship, marveled at his gift. His songs resonated through valleys and peaks, calming frightened children, rallying hunters, and harmonizing with the howling winds. When a slumbering ice dragon awoke from its cavernous lair and threatened to annihilate the mountain villages, Serkan alone climbed into its icy domain. There, amid frost and darkness, he sang with all his heart. The dragon hesitated, its ancient fury quieted by the purity of his melody. Tears of molten ice glistened in its eyes as it withdrew deep into the mountains. The village was saved, yet Serkan's lungs paid the price, weakened by the bitter cold of the dragon's breath. He continued to sing for his people until his voice cracked and faltered with age. His legend was carried on the wind, a testament to courage and compassion that could tame even the fiercest of foes. On the vast steppes where grasslands stretched endlessly to meet the sky was Ivara, a warrior whose skill with the spear was unmatched. Born amidst nomadic tribes who lived and died by the horse, she grew swift and strong, mastering the art of riding before she could walk. Her presence was a force that inspired unity. As rival tribes waged wars of conquest and revenge, Ivara rose above their conflicts, uniting them under her banner. She rode into battle at the head of her warriors, her spear flashing like lightning in the morning sun, scattering enemies before her. Peace followed her victories, Yet Avara found herself burdened by the loneliness of leadership. Every decision weighed heavily upon her shoulders, every life lost in battle a scar upon her heart. Her legend was celebrated in song and dance, a tale of wind and steel, unstoppable yet solitary. In the sun-scorched desert lands, where mirages shimmered like ghosts, Cahill was born with a mind sharper than any blade. He was a scholar, a man of logic and perception, capable of unraveling the most intricate mysteries. When drought and famine ravaged his homeland, he sought the fabled oasis said to lie hidden beneath the dunes, a source of water that could save his people. Many caravans perished in search of it, lured by illusions or swallowed by sandstorms, but Cahill's intellect guided him through treacherous terrain. He deciphered cryptic runes carved into ancient stones, charted stars by night, and read the shifting patterns of the dunes. At last he uncovered the oasis, a lush sanctuary where crystalline waters bubbled from the earth. His people rejoiced, their survival secured, yet Cahill mourned the companions lost during the arduous journey. His legend was one of wisdom and perseverance, a light of reason amid the mirage of despair. Across the tempestuous seas, where storms brewed without warning, lived Theron, a child of the tempest itself. Born during a violent storm, she grew up with the wind at her back and the crash of waves in her ears. Her spirit was unbound, her movements as fluid as the shifting tides. The tempest gods, favoring her, blessed her with the ability to command the skies. She soared above the ocean, guiding sailors to safety and calming the fiercest storms with a sweep of her hands. Fishermen swore they saw her figure dancing amidst the clouds as lightning arced harmlessly around her. Yet despite her powers, Theron often felt as though she belonged nowhere, not to the earthbound mortals who revered her, nor to the storm-wreathed heavens she commanded. Her legend was remembered as one of mercy and flight, a bridge between humanity and the untamed sky. In the dense jungles where vines entwined with towering trees and rivers roared through deep valleys lived Jorlin, a man whose hands could shape the land itself. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet and could coax roots and stones to move at his command. When sinkholes began swallowing villages and the rivers threatened to dry, Jorlin turned to the spirits of the forest. He wove vines into bridges, sealed chasms with stone, and restored the flow of life-giving waters. The jungle responded to his touch, thriving where it had withered. Yet Jorlin found himself increasingly alienated as the forest grew more sentient and protective in his presence, changing in ways that made it difficult for him to leave. His legend was one of renewal and resilience, the embodiment of nature's enduring strength. From the misty highlands where the moors were treacherous and beasts prowled unseen came Arcrea, a solitary figure who stalked the shadows with unmatched precision. She was a hunter of nightmares, tracking creatures that slipped between worlds to prey upon the weak. Her arrows, tipped with the essence of night rowan, banished these shadow fiends back to the void. The villages she protected lived without fear of the dark, yet they rarely saw her face. Reverence turned to myth, and soon the people spoke of her as a spirit rather than a mortal. Arceria's legend became that of a silent sentinel, ever watchful, sacrificing companionship for the safety of others. In the river deltas where waterways twisted like veins lived Palin, a healer of extraordinary compassion. When a plague swept through his homeland, decimating entire villages, he refused to abandon the sick. He ventured deep into the swamps to gather rare herbs, risking infection and death with every step. Through tireless effort, he discovered remedies that cured fevers, cleansed poisons, and restored hope. Yet each act of healing drained his life force, and Palin grew frailer with each patient saved. His legend was one of sacrifice and kindness, the embodiment of selflessness even as his own vitality waned. On volcanic islands where the ground trembled with the fury of fire lived Zara, a woman with skin that glowed like molten gold. She could soothe the restless volcanoes with chants and offerings, preventing eruptions that would obliterate entire communities. Each time she descended into the fiery depths, she endured searing pain and the constant threat of death, yet she never faltered. Over time, the flames she subdued began to consume her inner warmth, leaving her colder with each victory. Zara's legend became one of courage tempered by quiet suffering. The 12th was Morith, a voyager of the seas who possessed an innate sense of direction unmatched by any compass. She charted unexplored waters, forging paths between distant lands and fostering trade where isolation had reigned. Storms battered her ships and unseen dangers lurked beneath the waves, but Marith never turned back. She longed for a safe harbor, yet her restless heart drove her onward, ever seeking horizons beyond reach. Her legend was celebrated by sailors who whispered her name when navigating treacherous waters. For many years, these 12 legends lived apart, unaware of the threads connecting their fates. But the world was changing. Mortals grew greedy, kingdoms waged relentless wars, and the balance of nature began to fray. Earthquakes split the ground, seas receded, forests withered, and disease spread unchecked. A great void, a chasm of nothingness, began to spread across the world, devouring all in its path. The spirits who once watched over the realm whispered warnings into the dreams of the 12. Each awoke with the same vision: a place where the ley lines of the earth converged, a plateau that lay at the heart of the world. Drawn by forces they could not ignore, the 12 began their journeys toward this meeting point. Oriella left her golden fields, Falric abandoned his moonlit forest, and Leonora departed the safety of her coral reefs. Serkan's weakened lungs carried him across the frozen mountains, while Ivara led her horse into unknown lands beyond the steppes. Cahill left the comfort of his oasis, and Theron rode the storms inland. Jorlin wove through the dense jungles. Arcria followed the shadowed paths of the highlands. Palin pushed his frail body across rivers and valleys. Zara descended from her volcanic slopes, and Mareth anchored her ship on unfamiliar shores before journeying on foot. As they traveled, the land's suffering became undeniable. Rivers ran dry, crops failed, and the void's influence spread like an infection, swallowing entire villages. The legends quickened their pace, hearts heavy with the knowledge that their world teetered on the brink of collapse. At last, they reached the plateau known as the Meridian Confluence, where all the ley lines converged. It was a barren, wind-swept place, scarred by fissures that glowed with the lightless energy of the void. There, for the first time, the 12 legends stood together. At the Meridian Confluence, the 12 stood upon the cracked plateau, silent as the wind howled across the barren expanse. Each felt the same unsettling sensation, as though the ground beneath them trembled not from the shifting of earth, but from something alive, something vast and insatiable. The fissures stretching across the land pulsed faintly with a strange, lightless energy that seemed to drink in all warmth and sound. It was the embodiment of the void they had seen in their dreams, and now they understood its true nature. It was not merely a tear in the world, but a hungry force intent on erasing all life. The legends realized their journeys had led them here, not by coincidence, but by design. The spirits who had whispered warnings in their sleep had bound their fates together. Each of them carried gifts shaped by lives of trial and sacrifice, and each understood that alone, none could hope to stop the void's relentless advance. Yet they were strangers, their paths previously separate, and unity did not come easily. Tension simmered between them. Some were natural leaders, others solitary protectors, and the weight of their differing philosophies threatened to fracture their resolve. But as the plateau shuddered again, and a distant roar echoed from the chasm, they pushed aside their hesitations. Cahill, the scholar, studied the fissures with sharp eyes, piecing together fragments of ancient knowledge he had carried for years. The void was feeding upon the ley lines, the veins of life that crisscrossed the world. Severing the ley lines would leave the earth barren and lifeless, but allowing the void to continue consuming them would mean the complete annihilation of all realms. Cahill concluded there was only one way to halt it. The ley lines needed to be realigned and sealed with a bond stronger than the void's hunger. This bond would require the combined essence of all 12 legends, drawn together in unison, their powers interwoven into a single, unbreakable force. Oriella stepped forward, understanding the risk before any words were spoken. To merge their essences with the ley lines meant sacrificing themselves, becoming eternal anchors at the Meridian Confluence. Falric clenched his fists as the truth sank in. The forest he had sworn to protect would never see him again if he stayed. Leonora thought of her island kingdom and the people she loved, wondering if they would remember her when she was gone. Serkan, his breath ragged from his weakened lungs, already knew his fate, for he had given everything once before for the sake of others. Ivara's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, torn between her duty to her tribe and her responsibility to the greater world. Yet even as doubt gnawed at them, the ground beneath their feet split further, and a monstrous form rose from the depths of the void. It was a colossal entity of shadows, featureless yet terrifying, its body formed of writhing tendrils that reached hungrily toward the ley lines. The creature's presence was suffocating, a physical weight that crushed hope. Its roar reverberated through the bones of the legends, and the fissures widened as it advanced. There was no time for indecision. Jorlin called upon the strength of the earth, raising walls of stone to hold the creature at bay, but the tendrils tore through them as though they were brittle branches. Arcria loosed arrows tipped with night rowan essence, striking the tendrils with precision, forcing the shadow to recoil. Theron summoned the storm, lightning spearing the entity's form as winds howled with destructive force, yet the void absorbed the energy like a sponge. Zara descended into the fissures themselves, her body glowing with molten light, sealing breaches temporarily with fire, even as the void gnawed at her strength. The battle raged with a ferocity none of them had experienced. Palin, though frail, wove healing energy through the group, mending wounds as fast as they were inflicted. Mareth's sense of direction allowed her to anticipate the creature's movements, guiding the others to strike where its defenses faltered. Oriella reached into the depths of the earth, coaxing dormant seeds to sprout into massive vines that lashed at the tendrils, holding them back for precious moments. But the void was relentless, and for every blow struck, it grew stronger, feeding on their efforts as much as it did the ley lines. Cahill, amidst the chaos, finished deciphering the final alignment needed to bind the ley lines together. He shouted his findings, and though his voice was drowned by the cacophony, the others understood instinctively. Each legend moved to a point along the ley line nexus, their positions forming a great circle around the plateau. The entity surged forward, sensing what they intended, but Avara mounted her horse and charged into its path. Her spear struck true, anchoring the creature momentarily as Theron's tempest winds hurled it backward. One by one, the legends began channeling their essence into the ley lines. Oriella's life-giving energy flowed first, revitalizing the cracked earth beneath her feet. Falric followed, his bond with the wilderness infusing the ley lines with the resilience of ancient forests. Leonora contributed to the strength of the sea, her essence washing through the nexus like tides reshaping the shore. Serkin's final song poured into the earth, the melody resonating with the ley lines and calming their chaotic pulses. Jorlin gritted his teeth as he released his control of the earth, becoming part of the foundation itself. Arcrea relinquished her solitude, weaving her hunter's precision into the ley lines' fabric. Palin's healing energy surged outward, stitching the ley lines together even as his body withered. Zera's molten essence burned through the void's corruption, sealing fissures with the intensity of volcanic fire. Mareth's sense of direction became a guiding star within the nexus, ensuring the alignment held true. But as their power merged, the void entity realized its impending defeat and unleashed a final assault. It tore through Jorlin's stone barriers, lashing tendrils toward Cahill, the last to channel his essence. Ivara, already wounded, hurled herself in front of the strike, her spear shattering as the tendrils pierced her chest. Her sacrifice bought Cahill the moment he needed. With trembling hands, the scholar completed the alignment, channeling not just his essence, but the culmination of all the knowledge he had ever gathered. The ley lines ignited with blinding light, surging outward in a wave of pure energy. The void entity writhed in agony as the ley lines constricted around it, sealing the fissures one by one. Its tendrils thrashed wildly, but Oriella's vines held firm, Zara's fire burned hotter, and Theron's winds bounded in place. At last, the creature was dragged into the chasm from which it had emerged, its roar fading into silence as the fissure snapped shut. The plateau trembled violently before settling into stillness. In the aftermath, the ley lines pulsed with renewed life, their glow bright and steady. The world was safe, but the legends who had anchored the nexus were gone. Their physical forms dissolved into the earth, sky, sea, and stars, their essences forever bound to the ley lines they had saved. The meridian confluence was no longer barren. Flowers bloomed where Oriella had stood, and towering trees rooted in the spot Falric had claimed. Rivers of molten rock cooled into fertile soil where Zara's light had burned, and crystal-clear streams trickled through the plateau, guided by Mareth's enduring sense of direction. The people of the world would later find this transformed land and marvel at its beauty, sensing an ancient power humming beneath their feet. They built shrines at the meridian confluence, not fully understanding the sacrifice that had been made, but feeling its significance nonetheless. Stories of the 12 spread far and wide, passed down through generations. Each culture added its own embellishments, yet at the heart of every tale was the same truth. 12 individuals, drawn from every corner of the world, had come together in its darkest hour to preserve life. Oriella became a symbol of hope and renewal, invoked during times of famine or drought. Falric was remembered as the eternal guardian of the wild, his spirit believed to roam forests unseen. Leonora's memory lived on in coastal villages, where fishermen offered garlands to the sea before setting sail. Serkin's songs were sung by shepherds in the high mountains, echoing across valleys where his voice had once calmed an ice dragon. Ivara's name was carved into the standards of warrior tribes, her unity and sacrifice guiding their leaders. Cahill's wisdom was immortalized in texts and teachings, reminding scholars to seek knowledge not for themselves, but for the greater good. Theron was revered as a goddess of storms, her presence felt in every breeze that filled a sailor's sails. Jorland's essence thrummed in the roots of towering trees, a reminder that the earth itself was alive. Arcrea's legend was whispered at night by children seeking comfort from unseen fears, believing she still patrolled the shadows. Palin's herbs and remedies were passed down by healers who claimed their cures carried his blessing. Zara's fire was honored by communities living near volcanoes who left offerings of fruit and grain at their slopes. Marith's name was spoken by explorers setting out into the unknown, trusting her unseen hand to guide them. Centuries passed, and civilizations rose and fell, yet the meridian confluence remained sacred and untouched. The ley lines kept the world in balance, their energy flowing strong and true because of the 12 who had become one with them. Though their physical forms had faded, their presence was felt in every rustling leaf, every crashing wave, every gust of wind, and every flicker of flame. In quiet moments, travelers who visited the confluence swore they could hear faint voices carried on the breeze, the echo of a song resonating from deep within the earth. Some claimed to see ghostly figures moving between the trees or standing watch over the rivers, their eyes filled with the same determination that had once saved the world. Others said that when the moon was high and the stars burned bright, the shadows themselves seemed to form the shapes of 12 guardians, watching, waiting, and ready to rise again should the balance ever falter. And so the 12 legends lived on, not as mortals but as eternal forces woven into the fabric of the world. Their tale was not one of conquest or glory, but of unity, sacrifice, and the belief that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the light born of selflessness could never be extinguished. The void would not return, for it had been sealed by the very essence of those who had faced it, and the world flourished under their silent guardianship. Generations later, when children looked to the sky and asked their elders why the stars seemed to twinkle brighter at the meridian confluence, the answer was always the same. It was because the 12 still watched over them, their sacrifice a reminder that legends are not merely stories of the past, but the foundations upon which the future stands. Their unity had saved the world once, and their essence would ensure that its balance endured for all time. The plateau became a sanctuary for all peoples, a place where disputes were set aside and alliances forged in recognition of the 12. Pilgrims traveled across deserts, forests, oceans, and mountains to stand upon the sacred ground, seeking guidance from the unseen guardians. Some left with renewed courage, others with visions of the past, glimpses of the day the void was defeated. All departed with the understanding that they, too, carried the potential for greatness. The world healed, and though the legends could no longer walk its lands, their influence remained. Flowers bloomed even in the harshest deserts. The seas offered their bounty generously. Forests grew dense and thriving, and the sky shone clearer than it ever had before. And when storms came, they were gentle, carrying life-giving rains rather than destruction. Thus, the story of the 12 legends came to its quiet conclusion, not with fanfare or triumph, but with the enduring harmony they had fought to protect. Their sacrifices became the unseen pillars of the world, their names etched not only in stone, but also in the hearts of all who lived. And though the void was gone, the people never forgot the lesson of unity, for they knew that should darkness ever rise again, it would be their duty to stand together just as the 12 once had. The meridian confluence, blooming with life and shimmering with unseen energy, stood as their eternal monument. The world would forever whisper their names, carried on the wind, woven into the earth, echoing through the waters, and glowing in the firelight. For they were not simply 12 individuals, but 12 eternal guardians, bound to the ley lines and to each other, ensuring that life would always prevail over the void.